Welcome to the Empowering Transformation series. How to release stress and past trauma, have a peaceful mind, and the power to move forward. I've created this series so that you can have new insights and more gracefully move through challenging times. And today I have my friend Spencer Watson. Spencer is a mind and identity specialist. He lives in northern Utah with his wife and 3 children. He's an advanced body talk and parama practitioner specializing in the brain and mind. He owns several businesses and works with individuals and business as a practitioner, consultant, and mentor. Spencer, welcome, welcome.
How's it going?
I have loved the work that you've done with me with mentoring and healing, and you have so much to offer this world. Tell me and the audience about a time in your life when things were not going as smooth as you would like and that you were stressed out, but also tell about the gifts that came from that hard time. Can we start there?
Yeah, so back in 2013 is when I kind of would say I had my first health crisis. And I had graduated high school. I was going on a service mission and had just been gone for just a couple of months. And I started having these stomach issues. I started having, I didn't really understand my anatomy of my body at that time. And so I thought it was my stomach. Anything, in the abdomen area is the stomach. And it was later, going to GI doctors, they were like, you need to have your gallbladder removed. So I went home to have the surgery and just recover at home. And luckily I went to a very wise Asian GI doctor who was very good at acupuncture and other Oriental medicine modalities. And he goes, it's not your gallbladder. And it later turned out, as one thing happened after another, into a diagnosis of lupus, an autoimmune disease. And that was, I would say, one of the most stressful times of my life, because I had never experienced such severe pain or neuropathy. Basically, my body going in one direction as I went in another. And at that time, my family, I'm the first generation of my family to not be a farmer on both sides of my family. And so we really didn't use doctors, but that was our form of medicine. That was our, that's just really all we knew. So we had gone to doctors, we'd gone to specialists all over the state of Washington, and it was difficult. It was difficult to hear kind of their layout of kind of how essentially my life could potentially turn out. And that is when, during that health crisis, I was introduced to more holistic measures, because every doctor I went to, every specialist, any doctor I went to just kept giving me more medication. Like that was like every time we'd leave the office, I was looking for answers and they were handing me a prescription slip. And eventually got to the point where I was on bed rest the majority of the day and night. I at one point had to move out of my parents' house. I moved in with my grandparents because they didn't have stairs. And I just had a lot of especially my legs were really affected from the autoimmune. And as I was introduced to more holistic measures, that's really what I would say was the blessing in disguise of that entire experience. And I wouldn't trade it for anything now, because it's forced me to explore and be open-minded to alternatives than what I was raised and the Western culture and Western hemisphere teaches as anything that's not hocus pocus, And so just to explore new avenues of healing and not look for, things that just you put in your mouth and all of a sudden better. So that was, I would say, the biggest turnaround that I've had and the biggest blessing of it all, because if I wouldn't have had those experiences of the autoimmune and one thing after the other, I wouldn't have been open to something different. And I just knew when I was taking that cocktail of prescription drugs, I was like, this is not right. I was 18 at the time, and I was like, this is just not right for an 18-year-old body to need to be taking all this medication beyond bed rest, I mean, I was just mentally, I was just in the dumps because I didn't know how to handle what was happening in my world. And the only answers I got were just take these pills and, you know, be on bed rest, and that's what we can give you.
How did you begin to pull out of that hard place?
That's a really good question. So I was laying in bed one day and I was eating. This is how bad it was. I was eating, you know, those big Hershey bars are like a fourth of a pound or half a pound with almonds in them. I was
Maybe the
probably,
symphony bars?
yeah, I was probably eating those about one every other day and watching Netflix and just down beside myself. And I just kind of had a realization one day. And as I asked myself, is this all I can give? You know, because I pretty much had taken the excuse of listening to my doctors as the authority in for my own physical body and how I was going to treat it. And even though I started hurting, I started getting up and I would go visit people. I would go visit I grew up spending a lot of time with my grandparents. They just lived down the street. And so I knew a lot of like the elderly people within our, you know, local church congregation. And so I would just go visit the widows and I'd go lay on their couch and I would talk to them. And I just knew if I had to lay down, if all I could do was lay down at the time, then I was going to do it somewhere else than in my bed. And so I just started going, you know, I'd force myself to go be with friends. I'd force myself to go do things because I knew if I wanted my life to change, then I couldn't keep doing the same thing that I was doing. And I just forced myself, to be honest with you. I forced myself to change my environment and change my mind. And it took 9 months. It took like a long 9 month period of kind of one day at a time. And there would be ups and downs and it'd feel like I had like made it so far. And then the next day it'd be like back to day one. Um, it's really frustrating. But I think that's just kind of how that's the pattern of life, you know, it's just kind of the ups and downs, the ebbs and flows. And so when you have that understanding, I wish I had the understanding I have now that I could have told my 18, 19-year-old self, you wouldn't put so much pressure on yourself. You just kind of allow it to ebb and flow and know that some days you're going to be on top of the world and the other day you're going to feel like everything's falling apart. But if I would remind myself, Spencer, your life is falling into place. Your life is falling into place.
You would tell yourself that even as it seemed like it was falling apart.
Yeah. And I kind of just had, you know, doctors would say, you know, you're going to be on bed rest. You might, you know, your liver, you're going to need a new liver. Your kidneys aren't going to do so good. You'll probably be, you know, in kidney failure by the time you're in your 30s. I mean, it was just kind of there because, you know, they give the worst case scenario. And I just decided I wasn't going to accept it. And that's really what it came down to. I was like, you know, I'm just not going to accept this. I don't accept that I'm going to live a lot. I was like, I've got too much to give. I've got too much to give, too much to do. And I refuse to accept that as my life.
Wow. So were there times that you felt like you were being led to do certain things and then still have that ups and downs about that path that you were led to?
That's what was some of the times the most frustrating is when you feel inspired to go do something and that intuition just kind of leads you somewhere. And then I think what I would do is I would get this, you know, inspiration or something would fall into place. And then I would go, oh, this must be it. Versus realizing this is a piece.
This is one piece.
Right. And not, you know, and so part of the roller coaster was my own expectations, my own drawing the conclusions versus allowing it to unfold, you know. And so it kind of goes back to that whole understanding life in an unfolding perspective versus an ending, you know, coming to a conclusion. It's always the beginning of something new. And so there was many, many, many times. And that's really kind of how I got introduced to holistic things. I had one of my good friends growing up in high school, her mom, and then my old Sunday school teacher and piano teacher. They stopped by my house one day just to visit and see how I was doing because it has just happened so quickly. Things were just, you know, progressing so quickly with autoimmune. And they just kind of, connected with me and talked with me. And they're like, we might, there might be something that could help you, if you're open-minded. And that's kind of when I was introduced to body talk. I was introduced to essential oils and herbs and supplements, and really kind of addressing me as the physical, the mental, the spiritual, the emotional, versus just seeing me as this mechanical robot. And so it was really interesting as I was introduced to those things, how it just made more sense. It just almost seemed like they understood more of what I was going through than basically just asking me a series of questions and writing me a prescription. And so as I started to go more of the natural route, I started doing less and less of the Western medicine route.
Mm-hmm.
And I started just taking myself off the medications, and I started to just put things down and go, I'm going to try this, because it just, when you can just feel something in your soul that something is, it's not just a coincidence why these things are happening, and I mean, just even that, those two women showing up at my house, I had just been praying, like, if there's a natural way, if there's a different way, then I'm ready and I'll do it. And it just kind of showed up at my house.
Being open-minded, being open to receive the blessings God is trying to give to you, and not having this judgment.
Right.
It off.
Right. Yeah. Not have, like, this is, I was talking with someone actually this morning about, well, I know he was sharing how he knows exactly what he needs to do. He knows exactly what needs to happen, but it's not happening. And so I just kind of said, what if what you think is what you're supposed to be doing really isn't? And that's why it's not happening. Because if it was supposed to, it would happen. And I think it's just kind of letting go of those rigid mental lines that we draw, and allowing more of an ebb and flow experience is crucial when it comes to healing.
Thank you for sharing that. Well, look at you. Now it's been 5 years that you've had your own healing center.
Mm-hmm.
And tell us about the kind of work that you chose to do there, and whatever you want to say.
Yeah. So the reason why I opened it actually was because my wife and I had our first baby, and I was working from home. We had a couple employees helping me with some projects I was working on, and it just was not working having people coming in and out of the house with a new baby. So the initial response was, okay, let's just get an office space and rent it. And then it kind of morphed into this idea of, well, there's all these rooms here. Why don't we do a wellness center? So not being a doctor or a physician, but simply just having my certifications with Body Talk. And we got a couple of foot zoners. We got massage therapists. We got people that were open-minded. We got people that were more interested in offering something holistic. And that's really what it turned into. We would have people drive 6 to 8 hours coming in for appointments, because really what we were offering, the majority of our clients were people that actually had never experienced holistic medicine.
It was such a beautiful facility. I'm in Arizona, and I drove up to see you, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is gorgeous. Yeah. It's such a lovely place.
And that's really what I wanted. I wanted something, because sometimes you go to holistic places and there's, beads on the wall, and it's just not professional. It's not, that's really what I wanted to offer. I wanted to offer somewhere professional. So people that were used to going to doctors' offices would come here and feel a sense of normalcy. And then we would kind of open their mind up to other alternative ways to help them. And so I would say a good half of my clientele when they first were coming to me, had never experienced any alternative medicine. They had exhausted the Western medicine field, and were not getting the answers, or the answer they were getting they weren't liking, and they just knew there was something else. And so they would just find their way up to Logan, and we'd help them the best we could.
So how do you explain the kind of energy work you do? What is energy work to you, and why does energy work?
Yeah, so to me, so I chose to get certified in Body Talk and become an advanced practitioner, because What I love about Body Talk is it's science-based with the understanding of being the spiritual being, having, you know, energy centers, having, there's more to you, really bringing in Chinese medicine and Ayurvedic medicine with quantum physics and quantum mechanics and kind of merging them together. And so I really like that because it allowed me to, we had doctors come into our facility. We had surgeons, all, you know, tons of people, counselors, and they'd come in and tour. And if I knew I knew that if I wouldn't have had the training I had to talk and explain things the way I could, it wouldn't have been as well received. And so to me, the body and the mind are directly connected and associated to the point where the body is truly the instrument of the mind. But what happens is because of stress, there's a disconnection that happens within our mind and our body, and that turns into physical ailments and diseases. So what I do is I go in and I figure out where did that communication system break down, and then through a variety of like tapping techniques, we reestablish the communication so the body and mind can heal themselves. And so that's kind of where I focus. I really am focused on the mind. I'm really focused on the body, its relationship to each other, and then assisting people as they go through the transformative process of opening their mind up to believe new things, and then allowing their body to catch up to where their mind is. Because there's that process that has to take place. And then supporting the body while it does that, and trying not to let the mind get discouraged while the body takes time to move through a new phase of life.
Yeah. Can you explain why it is that, you know, people move forward and then they slide backwards? I understand that what you're saying with the body's trying to catch up to where the mind is. Is there something else that doesn't let us just keep the progress that we've made?
Yeah, I think sometimes what happens is, and I would observe this in my clients quite often, they'd come in, have great experiences within a session, they do good for a couple of days, and then they would feel like they slid back. And I think what it comes down to is because of the way our brain is designed, we function, the majority of people function more off memories than they do active thinking. So a lot of people, what I found, would actually confuse the faculty of the mind called memory with the faculty of the mind called thinking. And they would those memories that would play out in their life, they would think they're thinking differently, but they're not. They're just living in a memory. So they're essentially trapped in time. And they would slide back in as they go into their environment, because what happens is they wouldn't think while they're in their environment. They would just go back into the role that they played at the beginning. So their mind would switch back onto its autopilot, and then the body would follow suit. And so then they'd come back and get an appointment, and they weren't prepared to put in the effort of thinking, you know, and really kind of spend more time kind of adjusting their environment. You really kind of have to make it a full life experience if you want to heal, in my opinion. If you really want to have some deep healing, then your whole lifestyle has to change. That's why I call myself a mind and identity specialist. Essentially, your identity has to change if you want to heal.
Yeah. No, thank you for sharing that. I know that for your clients, you've done a couple things. You send them with exercises and you connect them with nutrition. First, let's talk about the exercises, because we are going to learn how to do that connection. And if you could do it slowly and very clearly so that they can rewatch this and glean how to actually apply.
For sure. Yeah, so one of the things that in Body Talk, there's a variety of different protocols and procedures that we follow. But a couple of different techniques I wanted to share today is first one is called Cortices. So Cortices is designed to help the left and right brain as they come together and communicate more effectively. Because sometimes what happens is they just split. The split mind happens, and then you're kind of scattered. And that's kind of what I talk about when we're living in the memory versus active thinking. It takes a lot of effort actually to think. That's why people like other people to think for them. And it's very common for that to happen. I mean, really, back when I was sick, I was allowing the doctors to think for me. I wasn't thinking for myself. So as I started thinking for myself, my whole lifestyle began to change. My identity began to change. And as that began to happen, I truly began to heal. You know, my body, I no longer suffer from any autoimmune issues, you know? So the first one is cortices. This is an awesome technique to help relieve stress. It's also a good, you may have heard of different grounding techniques. I could put it in that category, as well as just kind of getting present, you know, because we focus on the breath. You know, we really focus on the breath. So the purpose of cortices, you actually need both hands. And what you do is you start here at the base of the skull. And what you'll do is you'll move your hand all the way around kind of where, you know, the brain split. And you start at the base, and then you take the other hand and you tap over the head. And you just kind of close your eyes and just take a big, deep breath in and out. Then you just kind of go over the heart and tap over the heart. And you're just kind of syncing up the head, the heart, and then you actually go down, you tap on the gut. So you're addressing all three major neurological centers of the head, the heart, and the gut. So once you accomplish the first one, then what you'll do is you'll take your finger, your hand, and you'll basically just put it, you know, right where your other hand.
Higher.
Yep. And just kind of, you do this exact same thing, and just breathing. And you slowly move your hand all the way up and around with your focus of, you know, within the mind of balancing left and right brain, balancing the heart, connecting with the gut. And you don't have to have your hand on your head. You might not want to mess up your hair. But you can just kind of bring it all the way around. You can also do this on family members, on your children. And then what you do at the end, once you've gone over the forehead, is you hold both left and right side of the brain. And what I like to do is I like to imagine just kind of like myself kind of hooking inside my brain, just kind of like latching the limbic center, so the emotional processing centers of the brain. And then just tap over the head and the heart and the gut.
You're tapping the head and the gut at the same time with both hands now?
You don't have to. I just kind of, you know, it saves time.
Okay. And does it matter which hand is where?
No.
Okay.
Mm-mm.
Beautiful. I feel a little bit more centered with that.
Yeah, it's a really simple technique. And so sometimes when I'm a little flustered, or if you're running short on time, if you feel like you're running out of time, that's a really good reset to kind of put you back into balance with time.
And you could probably do it pretty fast, right?
Oh yeah. Well, and to be honest with you, sometimes I just will lay there and I'll just kind of like hold the sides of my head and just, it's a mental, right? It's a mental connection. And then you're engaging the body to work with the mind, you know? So you essentially could, and I tell people, you really could just do it in your head. Yeah. The irony of the whole thing, right? It's all in your head and you can do it in your head.
Yeah. Just imagine the tapping. It does do just as much as the tapping sometimes. So
it does. And so, but I think it's beneficial to just take a minute and breathe, mm-hmm. You know, because I think we're just so distracted with life that we forget to breathe.
Yeah. How about the one that you call switching?
Yeah. So switching is the focus of this technique is actually to lower the stress threshold within your body, especially within your nervous system. So what you do is you take both your index finger or your pointer finger and your middle finger, and you place them over your eyes, and you actually just lightly press. What you'll want to do is you don't want to push too hard, but you want to go until you kind of see some like lights dancing. That's just helping with your optic nerve and just kind of getting everything to relax. And I just kind of hold it there until, there's 10, 15 seconds. And just take a big deep breath. And then what you do is just kind of come down to your kidney points right there, your collarbones, and just kind of massage them.
There's a little indentation there.
Mm-hmm. And you just kind of push. I like to press kind of firmly when I do it on myself, and just kind of breathe. And that just kind of helps lower your threshold. So I've noticed, especially, I get stressed actually when it's hot. And so like when it's hot in my house and I'm like having to move my body and, you know, get a bunch of stuff done, it just kind of pushes me over the edge. So I actually just kind of hold my eyes and just kind of allow myself to reset.
Nice. Thank you.
But I think one thing I would say about these techniques, don't do them as a last resort. Do them as part of your daily rituals. Do them as part of your lifestyle, your new identity, if you want, if these resonate with you. I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions when like we're trained in Western medicine that you go to the doctor when something's wrong, and it's usually when it's been wrong for a long time, when it finally becomes unbearable. And we need to have, in my mind, a different connection with our body. Is that when we start to feel something amiss, at the beginning we address it. We don't wait till the end. It'll take a lot less time to heal, and it won't cause additional repercussions. You know, it's just like when someone when their knee starts to hurt, instead of going and getting support for their knee, they just put all the extra weight on their other knee and they overcompensate. And so eventually the person has to go get a knee replacement, and then they have to get another knee replacement because they didn't take care of their knee when it began. You know, there's a lot of things you can do at the beginning versus waiting till the end.
Yeah. Now, I know that you helped your clientele with some nutritional products, and you did like a little experiment.
Sure did.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, so at the Wellness Center, it'd actually be a lot of people would bring me a lot of things because they were experimenting with themselves and just trying all sorts of new products and different techniques. And I had a good friend actually introduce me to a line of nutraceuticals. And I actually didn't give it much thought because I just thought, oh, this is just another thing that someone's bringing over. And
Can
so
you pause? Explain what a nutraceutical is.
Yeah, nutraceutical just is basically using food as medicine.
Okay.
So just using like what was designed to actually be medicine as medicine.
Okay.
In my belief system. And so as I started to, as I allowed my wife to try it and a couple of people in my office, and I could really see a big difference with them and just their countenance and their overall energy and well-being. And so I actually bought 120 units, and I did a case study with my clients, a wide variety of age, men and women, depression, anxiety, fibromyalgia, neuropathy, suicidal tendencies, a lot of physical stuff, and just aches and pains and stiffness, and a lot of side effects from medications they've been on, trying to help reverse those, and other things that they had put into their body and what the damage that has caused. And I simply just wanted to watch. I just wanted to see. So the clients that were open to it, they tried this healthy triangle for 30 days, and they just continued using it. And I watched in awe of how that was such a missing piece in my practice and working with individuals, because it's very simple, it's very easy to use, but it's also very powerful and very potent. And it allowed their body to regulate. It supported their body to get into that homeostasis and just simply regulate. So then they had the capacity to do more, to let go of more, to accept more, and to move forward in different areas of their life. And I was pleasantly surprised at the results that we were getting across the board of what was happening.
Wow. When you shared a little bit of that with me, you shared with me about the blood-brain barrier. Can you speak about that and the uniqueness of that?
Yeah, I think it's really important because I know a lot of people, especially in more holistically minded, are open to supplements and take a lot of supplements. And sometimes those supplements aren't always easily absorbed within the body. I had a friend actually who went in for a colonoscopy, and they found tons of supplements lodged within her colon. Like hard pills.
Oh.
And so, and I mean, that doesn't happen to everyone. But I think we have to look at the absorption rate to get the most out of our money. But I also think we have to look at the benefits of how it passes the blood-brain barrier, because that's really when we have huge changes in inflammation. And inflammation is the beginning of any disease. It's one of, I think, what causes the most static in our mind is the inflammation. And whether it's in the brain or whether it's throughout the entire body. So yeah, it's really significant, really important to make sure what you're taking crosses that blood-brain barrier so you actually get the results. You know, it gets into the cells, it gets into the rejuvenation of each cell of our body, because your cells are turning over, I think it's at a rate of 50,000 per second. So our body, we don't have the same body that we were born with.
Every 7 years we have a new body.
Right.
I believe is what it was.
It completely rejuvenates. And so that's another thing when you're looking at healing, when you're looking at changing your identity and really making a change, you have to have the proper understanding of these aspects of our body, the aspects of our mind. Then it prevents the frustration. Then it prevents the discouragement, because you know the game that you're playing. You know, you actually know what you're dealing with. So I think it's really important to know that, and then to plan for the future. I believe holistic minded people are more apt to preventative healthcare than reparative and immediate healthcare assistance. But even within the holistic community, I find that people are like, well, I just want this done. I just want this taken care of, versus understanding how it unfolds. And maybe that frustration about wanting to get to the end is what's actually causing you to be sick, and just kind of allowing things to just kind of naturally progress and naturally unfold.
Yeah, and we do tend to want immediate, profound changes. Of course, that's what we prefer.
Right.
Instead of the subtle,
right.
but it gets you in a good place. Like, I can't remember how long ago you got me on the product. Has it been 2 years, Spencer? I'm not positive.
I think we're at least coming up on 18 months.
Okay. So, but my brain, there's no way, no way that I could have done what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Without having it be on it that long. And for me, I didn't notice any grand difference.
Yep.
But after the fact, I recognized it was my first winter without having seasonal depression. And I didn't even realize that during the season. It was like afterwards, I'm like, oh, I normally.
See, and to me, that tells you that it's real. You know, that tells me that it actually works. And when something gives you such quick, immediate responses, I would be leery at the long-term results. You know, and kind of what happens long-term.
Yeah, and there's been times when I've kind of gone off of it, and I notice how, and I actually had a doctor do blood work, and they're like, the vitamin E that you guys have, or the fish oil that you guys have, she's like, you need to be on that specific brand. And because she saw my blood work when I was on it, and then I went off of it, and she saw, and I was telling her my symptoms. She's like, well, why aren't you still taking that? I'm like, because I forgot. I got out of the habit.
Yeah, that's usually
and she could see it in the blood work.
Yeah.
And
isn't that really where, you know, the blood, the chemicals, the hormones in our body, I mean, that's the big signals in our body.
Yeah. So, and not to talk about too much products, but I remember you introducing me to something called On, which with this summit, I swear some nights I was getting 4 hours of sleep and just going the rest of the time. And this little drink, oh, I don't have a bottle of it, but anyway, it's about this big, and I would drink a cupful, and that's all, and it would keep my energy up and my mind clear. And I'm one that I can't have high sugar. I certainly don't do well with high caffeine. And I was able to handle this. And what do you call that? It's you call it a different word. Is that still just nutraceuticals, or is it?
It falls in there. It's more focused on nootropics, and basically the food that will enhance the neurotransmitter communication system within the brain. So that's why you were experiencing that basically your synapses of your brain were actually able to work more effectively together. They were optimized.
Yeah, no, it totally was helping me.
Yeah.
So, and I find that, anyway, my son with his ADD is helped a bit with it as well.
Yeah, it's amazing. It works on the spectrum of anxiety and depression, as well as there's tons of nootropics that the ingredients, as I've studied each one, are amazing for people with Alzheimer's and dementia and Parkinson's and ADD and ADHD and a whole host of things. You know, basically, if you have a body, you would benefit from it. So I just think there's so many amazing things out there, and I'm really big on keeping it simple, because then it's actually doable. It's really hard to create a lifestyle change around massive upheaval, but if you can do small and simple steps every day to just slowly adjust over the 7-year period of really making a big, change in your life, then it's well worth it.
Yeah, no, thank you. I know for the free offering that we have for our audience is to invite them to free nutritional classes, and we'll be giving them the information when those happen on a weekly basis. And so you can opt into being notified when those are, and any links to look more deeply into the products. And so, yeah, just choose to opt into that, and we'll happily send more information if you're interested. Spencer, what else would you like to leave with us before we go today?
I think the most important thing that I would say that I would like to leave here is trust the process. Trust the process, trust the story of ups and downs, that there's going to be battles to fight, there's going to be battles to win. And you're essentially, if you really want change in your life, in your health, in your lifestyle, then you have to be the one to change. And you have to be committed to do something, maybe something you totally would never do before, you would never feel comfortable doing. But it's as we step out of our comfort zone, then we actually get different results. And I wish people would believe in themselves enough to step out of their comfort zone. They would trust enough to step out of their comfort zone and do what isn't the norm for them to get the results that are out of their current reality.
Yes, and it's nice. It's nice to have support groups that can help, because that's so scary. It is
so
scary. Get out of your comfort zone. Yeah.
I totally get that.
But yeah.
That's why I think it's important to work with someone that you feel like can help you do that. Have support groups, have a community that you can plug into. Be with like-minded individuals. It's really essential to surround yourself with people who are willing to go through the change themselves.
Yeah. Well, and we will have a Facebook group that is dedicated to this empowering transformation.
Great.
And I'll be inviting you to join that. And so people can find you there if they want to talk about.
I'd love to connect, and if people have questions, they can reach out.
Yeah. So thank you so much for your time, Spencer. I appreciate you so very much and honor all the work that you've done and the amount of caring that you have.
Thank you.
And I am privileged that you've been part of my healing journey. And thank you for the help that you've given me, both spiritually and helping my brain work better physically.
Anytime.
I appreciate that.
I appreciate you. You're a special lady.
I would like to say goodbye to our audience. I hope you have a day that is filled with love and peace and laughter. Bye-bye.